Alright, what's up guys? So we have two new stories that developed after UFC 254. We'll start off with Conor Mcgregor. He was responding to Justin Gaethje, who called him out after the fight, so let's check out the tweets. Justin Gaethje issues a challenge. Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier isn't official, so if McGregor wants to bounce out and get the belt, then I'm right here. McGregor responds and tweets, Dustin KO'd you, as well as your wrestling, grappling, and overall fear of the central positions being truly embarrassing tonight, Justin. So I think what Conor's referring to here is that Justin didn't really defend the different BJJ positions Khabib was going for. I was watching the Weasels breakdown, and apparently when Khabib went for the initial first round arm bar, he didn't really defend it. He just held on to his arm. And then when Khabib went for the triangle choke, Justin didn't really defend it. He just expected it to happen and tried to slam Khabib down. But on the feet, I think Justin did a good job of getting away from Khabib, stopping some takedowns early on. It was just that eventually, he looked very tired after the end of the first, and then Khabib was able to just do whatever he wanted at the end. Then we have Jon Jones tweeting back and forth with some of his fans, just trying to make his case for why he's the GOAT. So let's check out some of these tweets. So for the first one, he tweets, I'm just going to ask for the heavyweight championship belt and see if they give it to me, since we can ask for things now. He then responds to a fan and tweets, I've won 15 world titles. He just won his fourth. The fact that this is even a conversation is mind-blowing to me. I ask why should he just be handed a GOAT status? People tell me I should just let him have his moment. Unfortunately, his moment is associated with my life's work. And then he responds to a fan who initially tweets, huge fan Jones, like seriously, but I think the reason they are giving GOAT status is his level of dominance over literally everyone he has faced, plus his record number and clean background. Jones then responded, the same company who accused me of possible steroids vindicated me from it. If I just started fighting for titles 4 fights ago, I look like an absolute beast too. But okay, I guess you're only worth your last performance in this game. I got signed by the UFC literally 9 months after my first MMA practice. Unheard of. When I signed with the UFC, I was one of the youngest fighters on the roster, youngest champion in the history of the sport, and I've only had 3 competitive fights. He responds to another fan who tweets at him, John, bro, go to bed, man. It's just a rink. And then John responds, I understand most people have never been number 1 in their community, state, let alone world. My competitive nature won't allow me to stand by and see someone asked to be considered the best. I've sacrificed too much blood. So this tweet right here by John was really stupid in my opinion. Why is he attacking his fans? Why is he letting people know that they haven't been number 1 like he is? Seems like some very narcissistic comments coming from John, who can't handle that another person is getting the limelight. And it never makes your case for being the GOAT when you start arguing with your fans and to the public why you're the GOAT. There was a point in the NBA where LeBron James claimed he was the GOAT, and he got a lot of slack for it. I don't think Michael Jordan ever says he's the GOAT. A lot of it has to do with your character, how you represent yourself. If people are willing to kind of relate to you and if they want to be like you, then the chances of you claiming that GOAT status are much more likely. Like Muhammad Ali lost quite a few times, but still people look to him as one of the greatest because of the person he was and the things he did outside the octagon. I think John's missing this and he's completely focusing on his performance, and he's right. He definitely, by the stats, has a better career. He goes on to respond to a fan who asks him, do you really think you're the greatest ever? And he says, I mean, if I get outranked by a man with only 3 title defenses, I don't really know what to think anymore. Another fan tweets, it just doesn't add up. And Jon Jones responds, bro, when you're black in America, so many things don't add up. I'm just calling it how it is. Have to work 4 times harder. I think this is a completely ignorant comment from Jon Jones. He must understand that Khabib comes from a war-torn country in Russia, Dagestan, and he's Muslim. Of course, Khabib faces the same type of racism, if not more, than somebody like Jon Jones. He doesn't enjoy the luxury Jon gets to enjoy living in somewhere like North America. He literally lives up in the mountains in Dagestan still. They come from very different backgrounds, and I don't think you can compare the struggle of an African American to a Muslim in Dagestan mountain who grew up in a war-torn, state. His father wasn't even allowed to come to America to corner him for his fights. Like, how ridiculous is that? He only was able to corner his fight 1 time when he fought Dustin Poirier in Dubai. He then went on to tweet, when people hang on to the allegation and completely undermine the vindication, just don't want to give credit where credit's due. Yet people want me to stay quiet and let him have his moment while I just sit back and watch my hard work get moved down the rankings. It's not fair to my family or the team of people who have sacrificed to get me this far. A fan then tweets, the problem is Khabib destroys people and finishes them. John responds and says, over 50% of my career have been title fights. LeBron James is allowed to win a game by 1 point, but not Jon Jones. Man, have I really spoiled you guys. If we're having a popularity contest, I'll gladly take my L. This shit has nothing to do with fame or being a good person. I've given my whole adult life to this game. I owe it to myself to speak up. John Anik then tweets at Jon Jones, "You make a lot of fair points. There will always be recency bias, but there are plenty of us out there that recognize the value in your multitude of championship wins and title defenses." And then the last tweet from John from the night was not salty at all. "I really do respect Khabib. I honor the type of man he is, but being the best is earned, not given. Unfortunately, 4 title fights ain't it, no matter how much we all like him." So John is right in a lot of ways. He definitely does have a better resume, way more title defenses, and probably faced stiffer competition. But I don't think we can take away from the fact that Khabib was just a great athlete within the octagon and outside. He was an incredible representative of the sport. A lot of people will actually take GSP over Jon Jones, even though GSP, I think, has 2 losses. He avenged them as well. But still, Jon Jones doesn't have 2 losses. He never really was tested like that in the octagon. But it's the way GSP carries himself outside the octagon. People have so much respect for him and are willing to give him that GOAT status. I think what John's not realizing here is the GOAT status often goes to somebody who's not just the best in the octagon, but represents the sport to the highest level. Somebody like GSP, who does have 2 losses, but a lot of people see him as the GOAT. A lot of people see him better as Jon Jones or Anderson Silva. And that's just because of the way he carried himself inside and outside the octagon. You can also look at somebody like Muhammad Ali or even Michael Jordan. The way some of these guys carried themselves and the confidence they had in themselves was just truly admirable. You really wanted to emulate some of the characteristics they had. And you can't really say that for Jon Jones. You know, Jon Jones doesn't have the cleanest past. He has made a lot of mistakes, and I'm not trying to say that undermines his UFC career, but it definitely affects the way we view him and whether or not we're willing to give him the GOAT status. And Jon is right. He definitely has one of the best UFC careers ever. He might be one of the best talents we'll ever see. He came into the sport so young and just dominated from the beginning to the end. And he's still not even done his title reign. He might go for a heavyweight title. And if he could win that, of course, he'll further solidify himself as one of the best UFC careers of all time. I think the reason why people want to give the GOAT status to somebody like GSP or Khabib is that they're such admirable characters. When people like this get to the top of the game, they have all the money in the world. You expect them to change, but you look at somebody like Khabib and GSP and you can see that there's core values and who they are as a person doesn't really change. And that's something we can admire as people who don't have those luxuries. It's crazy to be able to look at somebody as rich and as famous as like Khabib, GSP, even Justin Gaethje had this incredible characteristic where they're just so down to earth still. You know, all this money and fame hasn't changed the way they are. They still seem like incredible individuals. So my main takeaway from this is it just doesn't look good for Jon. Clearly, he's the better fighter, more title defenses versus way more dangerous competition. But still, why are you doing this on Khabib's night? This is definitely not going to win him any fans. And like John Anik said, people have recency bias. Khabib just fought. Of course, they're going to give him the GOAT status for now. LeBron just won. A whole generation is saying he's the GOAT. Next time somebody else comes along and wins, a couple other people will be saying he's the GOAT. I think we need to sit back and admire the talent that the UFC has rather than fighting over who's the GOAT. Clearly, a lot of people think Jon Jones is the GOAT, and now a lot of people are saying Khabib's the GOAT. But we have to take into respect that these fighters are fighting in different divisions, never fought the same competition. So obviously, it's just an argument we're having for fun. But we need to realize that these talents won't be around forever. I made this mistake with Kobe, how he was always killing all my teams, and I hated him. But I should have realized I was getting to watch one of the GOATs, one of the greatest of all time. And it's just incredible to watch these great careers unfold in front of yourselves and have the opportunity to see somebody as great as like, you know, Muhammad Ali. And we're getting that in our eras with people like Jon Jones and Khabib Nurmagomedov. So yeah, I think we need to be appreciative of these fighters, but at the same time, we're always going to have these arguments. So it's always fun to compare them and say who's the best and, you know, make our case for our fighter. Right now, I have to give it up to Khabib. Just the storyline he's had and then his father passing away. It's very easy to relate to somebody like Khabib after watching him release all those pent up emotions and kind of just wearing his heart on his sleeve after his father had passed away. I think a lot of us could relate to what he had experienced and the fact that he was still able to overcome that adversity, put up one last fight. It makes him go in a different way where you could relate to him and truly empathize with him. And we all know that we'll experience some similar loss to what Khabib had gone through. So I think it's more about the storyline and the journey the fighter goes through. And Khabib's is much more relatable than somebody like Jon Jones, who is doing blow and then hooking up with prostitutes and still somehow fighting DC and beating him on the weekend. So I think why people take Khabib over Jon is because he's more relatable. Let me know what you guys think down below. Is Jon right? Is there even a conversation to be had? Does his 15 title defenses solidify him as the greatest of all time? Or has Khabib made a name for himself as a GOAT?